the only argument against Derrick Henry is if he gets hurt. That's the only argument. And yet we sat here at the beginning of the show and said the only argument against Christian McCaffrey is if he gets hurt. So why are we killing Derrick Henry for the same exact reason that we just argued that Christian McCaffrey could be the number 3 running back?
I disagree with that because I think that his overall upside, especially at this point of his career, is at a different point than it was 6 years ago when he was just playing 98% of the snaps for the Titans, because he doesn't quite have the same 4 touchdown a game in December upside that he did in some of those outlier years. Like, looking at his expected points, he overachieved last year, but he scored almost 17 fantasy points per game, and that was on 1.2 targets per game. Like, that is always going to be the drawback that, yeah, he averages the most touches inside the 5-yard line per game of any player, most inside the 10. That needs to keep up just to keep him at where he's at right now, because he still, Ian, went over his baseline of expected points. In terms of expected points versus what he did in reality, he was 2.9 points better than his expected points would suggest. And in expected points, he was behind Josh Jacobs, Cam Scatteraboo, Travis Etienne, Kyren Williams. That feels like more of his. Now, obviously, we have to add context to why he scored more points than those guys, and I will have him over those guys. But it feels like his baseline tier is more around those guys than some of the names that we've been talking about.
He did take a step back last year. Now, his step back was still better than a lot of other running backs, but yards per carry, success rate, explosive run rate. Like, he did go from pretty much first or second to at least behind, 8 or 9 other guys. My argument, Jake, would be, what if this Ravens offense isn't all that good?
Pat Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. Did you know there's millions of dollars available in NFL Best Ball on Underdog that's being drafted right now? Use code Mayo, get in there, win some cash. Okay? Jake Ciely, back on the show for the first time in what feels like a decade. Jake, welcome.
I know, it does feel like a decade. It's been a few months, which feels like years in our industry. But I'm making up for it, as you know. Then thank you to you. I get to see you in person in a few weeks.
Yeah, we'll be together for Meanie's wedding, friend of the show, Chris Meanie. Other big news besides Meanie getting married is Ian Hartitz joining a new company. Now of RotoWire and Odds Jam, it is Ian Hartitz.
Roto Ian, some of the kids are saying, appreciate you, man. So fun 3.5 years with Team Fantasy Life, but that's right, RotoWire here moving forward. So got my guy Theo joining the gang as well. Pretty pumped to do what we got going, but hey, nothing changing over here. I'd be remiss if I was missing my weekly Pat and Jake. I mean, come on now.
Well, we're going to be doing some running back rankings today, and we're going to take a different concept than we normally do of just me giving my rankings, Jake giving his, Ian getting his, and us yelling at each other. Now we can yell at each other in real time here. So I'll put the list of the running back rankings. We'll set it to half-point PPR. I'll dump that down in the description. Probably also have it in my newsletter as well. You can get access to all Jake's work at The Athletic in the description, and ditto for all of Ian's work over now at RotoWire and Odds Jam. You can find all of that in the show notes. So please go do that. Go support everyone. Smash like while you're here and give me your favorite running back value, at least early value from the time that we're doing these running back rankings. Because guys, I want to jump into it right away. We're going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs, who is the outside of Yahoo so far, Jake, is the consensus number 1, not only pick off the board, but running back off the board.
Ooh, I'm fine with it. I think it's really a discussion of 2 players, and if you want to go one way or the other, I go Bijan first and then Gibbs, but it's a tier of their own really that I do for my ranks is, and we just talk about that a lot. I've done that for years, but that they're really a tier 1 of those 2 running backs. So if you want to go Gibbs, I get it, and I get the whole optimism that we have no David Montgomery, but at the same time, like Bijan, I'll put it this way: I feel like Bijan has slightly less ceiling, slightly higher floor, and that's really the difference. But you're kind of nitpicky there.
Well, maybe that's what it boils down to here, Ian, is that I take a look at Gibbs and it feels like the ceiling is through the roof. And now with Stefanski in Atlanta, maybe you could say that's the case for Bijan, but you finally get rid of Algier and all of a sudden Brian Robinson's sitting there.
How long will he give Stefanski credit for Nick freaking Chubb in his prime being awesome? I mean, these Browns offenses have been atrocious for the better part of the last 2 years. Falcons organization, I wouldn't exactly say has been the most well-run group. So when they pick up Stefanski immediately after he's gone, I don't know. I don't like these vibes. Tua, Penix, that's one of the worst quarterback rooms in the league. I think we can probably all agree on. So look, for any running back, I think whatever stats we want to throw around, we're trying to see how good are they in real life. And right here, we're talking about two of the best running backs on the planet. Call it a wash. Are they old? Are they dealing with an injury? Nope. Both guys in their prime, called another wash. The volume situation used to usually be the one thing we could have against Jahmyr Gibbs, but as Jake said, no more David Montgomery, so that's a wash. And that's just the offensive scoring power. I want the Lions over the Falcons 8 days a week, and that's why I got Jahmyr Gibbs 101.
Well, you could say that the schedule, presumably, Jake, I know that the Lions are playing the fourth place schedule, but simply through osmosis of playing in the NFC South, that the Falcons might get a few easier matchups along the way here, especially late in the season.
And that's something that you can argue if you want to make the slim difference between the two, because we know that game script matters, especially when we talk about running backs. Shout out to Ryan Heath, recently pointed something out, and we'll talk about these two players, but was talking about the fact that Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry going a round and a half, almost 2 rounds apart, yet Jonathan Taylor on the Colts has 7.5 win total, and you have an 11.5 win total for the Ravens. And the difference between Jonathan Taylor in wins versus losses is almost a 20-point per game difference. So we know how it affects running backs. And it's not like the be all end all. It's not like a R2 of 9.9, but it is enough to say that if you want to play that difference in the schedule between the two, it's a little bit more predictable for the Falcons to likely be in contention and winning most of their games, where you could say, yeah, the tougher schedules with the Lions.
I would throw out
say
that
the Falcons have more games than the Lions? What?
No, he was saying that the Ravens are more than the Falcons have either go like hilariously under their win total. I think that's every year.
Yeah. So I was saying that the Falcons could be in contention more of their games than the Lions' difficulty of schedule, potentially playing from behind.
My mind's impressive.
Where are they at for wins? If you're in Canada outside of Ontario, you can go to coolbet.com, check out the win totals right now. I have a code down in the description if anyone wants it to get yourself a bonus out of over there. The fastest payouts in the biz. Just want to take a look at what the win totals are between them. What do you think they are, Ian, or do you know off the top of your head?
I'm going to guess Lions. I think they're up there. 10.5?
10.5. Regular season wins for the Falcons are 7.5.
Yeah.
Oh, so the market's down, and 10.5 for the Lions. The Lions are projected to be way better this year.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying the win total. I'm saying, and I referenced Ryan Heath for that. I'm saying we're just talking about two teams that were 9-8 and 8-9 last year, with as bad as the Falcons quarterback situation was, and the Lions still play in the tougher division. My point was being, if you're looking at the schedule, to what Pat was saying, I could see the Falcons in contention or winning more of their games than the Lions potentially playing from behind. That's all I'm saying.
All right, you're talking about like late in the season when it matters the most for us.
In the game script, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That tracks me. Who do you think's more likely to get pilfered between these two guys at the goal line? It's got to be Bijan, doesn't it?
Bijan.
You mean who's going to take off the field? I mean, Pacheco could be annoying in Detroit. It's good. We're talking about, again, the top 2 players in fantasy. So Brian Robinson versus Pacheco, who knows who can get a few more touches, but both these guys should be getting fed plenty. 15 plus touchdowns prime in their career. They could both catch 90 passes as well. That's the thing. Like, I do prefer Gibbs because I think it's as easy as Lions versus Falcons, but Bijan's my 102. He's the clear-cut RB2. It's tough to be hating on anyone, even Jake, if they do want to go Bijan over Gibbs.
So Gibbs is the first pick overall. Bijan Robinson is the second pick overall. And I'm taking this as between ESPN, Yahoo, NFFC, all redraft leagues, not looking at best ball right now because best ball is going to be a little bit different. This is for your standard redraft leagues, how this is going to work. Then there's a bunch of receivers who come off the board until we get to pick number 6, Jake. Christian McCaffrey is sitting there. He was the leader in points per game at running back last year. And yeah, he wasn't that great last year in terms of actual efficiency on the field. He just didn't get hurt for the first time in ages. And when he doesn't get hurt, he scores the most fantasy points.
Yeah, he basically missed one game 2 years ago and scored even more points per game the year before that. Actually, I think played the full season and was only around 18 or 19 half-point PPR fantasy points per game. But we know what Christian McCaffrey can be. This is the real thing. Put it this way, I don't want to make an argument for or against Christian McCaffrey because you know what's going to happen, Pat. At the end of the year, it's going to be all the people who said avoid him because of the touches are going to be like, ha, told you so. or he somehow plays 16, 17 games, even coming off 400 plus touches and makes it through, and he's still a top 4 running back. And everybody's like, see, I told you so. It was stupid. Like, forget the told you so. The real conversation for Christian McCaffrey is, do you want to take the risk over somebody who had over 400 touches? The three of us had this conversation, whatever the last time I was probably here, 2-3 months ago, where it's Ian brought up the fact that, like, why are we picking 360 or 370 or 380 or 375 for these random numbers that cut off people in history that had better seasons the year after or 2 consecutive seasons after that? So people are going to make their argument. You're either in or out on Christian McCaffrey. If you want to take him here, you're going to have to take him here. So if you don't because of the risk, completely get it. And if you want to push him down, that just means you're not going to get Christian McCaffrey.
Ian, are you one of the people who are in or out?
I have him RB3. I think he deserves to be RB3. When I'm on the clock at that point, I kind of like taking Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit more often, just because, again, as much as some of those touch workload studies, kill me. Again, 370 touches has been another one in the regular season. Bijan's been at 368 and like 366. So guess he's fine. Nothing to worry about here. But it is one of those things with CMC where you're right, Pat, like his rushing efficiency numbers were horrible last year. But, high volume receiving running backs, it's probably up there with dual threat quarterbacks as the closest things we had to cheat codes in Fantasyland. CMC last year, more full PPR. I know we didn't have PPR ranks, but he had more full PPR points than Saquon Barkley had. CMC, more full PPR points from receiving than Saquon had, period. All right. When you get that full extra point, it really is just ridiculous and it adds up in a hurry. So CMC, RB3, I'm with Jake where it's just like, oh man, if he's going to get injured, everyone's going to be saying, I told you so, I told you so. But, if the only thing we can say for CMC is, well, if he gets injured, well, what if he doesn't? Then we have the best running back in, fantasy football history at this point, we can probably say. So tough to be bickering too much there.
Additionally, what if Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt? If we're just playing who gets hurt, if someone gets hurt, they're going to be a bad pick.
What if Jonathan Taylor
I admit
again?
That someone like, yeah, I mean, look, I admit that CMC, he's older, he's been injured more, he's got the touches. Like, I do think he's more injury prone than these other guys, but you're right, Pat. People act like Jahmyr Gibbs is a 0 out of 10 and CMC is a 10 out of 10. Like, in reality, it's probably like a 4 versus 7 or something.
But if we think about it in those terms, Jake, why is he going 6th and not 3rd, or potentially even ahead of Gibbs or Bijan? Maybe the ceiling isn't there. I get why against the other running backs, but if you're going to have 2 running backs, 1 and 2 overall, and then you go receivers, I see no real discrepancy between the fantasy point output between McCaffrey and those top end guys. So all that's there is this baked in risk of the injury, which may or may not come. But if you have to take him at 6 anyway, why don't you take him at 3?
Well, it comes down to also, that's just how do you want to start your draft? If you want to start running back or wide receiver, then your point being, if you want to start running back, yeah, the argument is to take him at 3, because even to go back to what you started this with is that it was kind of an inefficient season by Christian McCaffrey standards, especially in the rushing department. It's really the receiving game, and it's always done that for him, has boosted his value. So if he has I think what's in the back of people's mind is the injury risk. Then also, like, is this the start of the slide? Is this the start of all of a sudden he's even seeing less in the passing game and continues to struggle by his terms in the run game, and all of a sudden he's only 18 fantasy points per game? Because if we talked about the ceiling was the 4 years ago that I brought up was 18 and change. If that was a ceiling, then I don't think there is the argument for number 3, because now you're talking about you're adding that risk, all those touches at this point of his career. But because the ceiling is still 22, if you feel that way, then your point stands, is that if you still feel that's the ceiling, then there's a definitive argument to take him as the 3rd player off the board, running back or wide receiver.
I guess, Ian, my point was being that if people are so okay with being like, well, very clearly the first 2 picks are running backs, this is the guy that's going to score either the most, second most, or third most points if he plays, and he's also a running back. It just seems strange to me that at 3, people are like, oh, no thanks.
I do think, I have it, Gibbs, Bijan, Jamar Chase, and Puka, top 2 scoring.
Like, we're not worried that Puka bites someone's face and has to leave the field? Like, what's like? Is that on par with an arthritic Achilles from Christian McCaffrey?
I do have CMC ahead of JSN. That's the one where I could just see a little bit of a drop off. New coordinator. Is Darnold going to continue to be this dude, for the 3rd straight season? So I get it there. It's a fair point, Pat. Full PPR, when you can really sink your teeth into that extra, you're getting from CMC in the receiving game, that would be the area where maybe, I would look at going over Chase and Puka. But 200 target upside for those dudes. Enough of a concern with CMC, who's going to be how old at this point, man? Like we are getting to the point where some of this age stuff, I think is survivorship bias, because think about it, there's just so many more 23-year-old running backs in the NFL.
He turned 30 last month.
And 30. He turned 30 last month. Over the last decade, there's only been 4 running backs 30 plus years old to average, I think, north of like of 16 fantasy points per game. 2 of them are Derrick Henry. Mark Ingram had another year in 2019 with the Ravens where he managed to do it. And then we had the Raheem Mostert, like 23 touchdown years. So we're already kind of going against history here. That would be my best, tiebreaker to go against, just 2 in their prime wide receivers with all sorts of volume.
I can see the reason of putting him 3. Like that's why, and I think that's where we're going to fall on this, right? Like Gibbs, Robinson, because Ian and I, Jake, outvoted you 2-1 on Gibbs over Robinson. We'll have number 2. We'll slot CMC into number 3. But if we're thinking about it in tiers, like, is it a tier of 2? Because I think that really should be a tier of 3.
I have it as a tier of 2, but I have it as a tier of 2 and then 1. Like I just feel like Christian McCaffrey's his own person because of everything we're talking about right now. It's similar to years where we talked about wide receivers in this vein, even tight ends, and it just comes down to the fact that like because he has the upside of them, but everything we brought up between the age, the workload to this point of his career, the multiple injuries, there's also uncertainty of how this team is put together with a healthy Mike Evans, what sounds like is going to be a healthy George Kittle for week 1 all of a sudden. And then the wide receiver situation with Pierce will now bump to number 2, but like, does he see that same target volume? I just think because there are so many questions that there's more, put it this way, there's more negative potential answers than there are positive. And I think that's why I would just put him on a land and a field or tier or whatever you want to call it of his own. I would go the 2 just because the floor of those 2 doesn't feel as bad as the floor of Christian McCaffrey if it goes wrong.
That tracks to me, Ian. I was looking at John Paulson's offensive line rankings over at 4for4.com, and number 9 in the league is the projection for the San Francisco 49ers. It would actually be like a little bit of a step down. They were 2nd in PFF grading by run blocking a year ago, but just a very solid offensive line it can help you score those touchdowns when you're only averaging 3.4 yards a carry.
Trent Williams is going to be 38 here pretty soon. He's obviously been missing a little bit more time here in past years. So at full strength and with the Shanahan scheme, I mean, I do think top 10 could be warranted there, but that would be the concern about the 49ers offense. I mean, God, we are, again, not only just relying on CMC, but Kittle coming back from an Achilles, Mike Evans coming back from everything last year. Like it is a situation where so many 30-plus-year-old former ballers are being relied on. A little nervous about them in, the ever-stacked NFC West.
Well, they have to play now. They have to practice next to but like Magneto or
they might move it. They might move somewhere else.
I thought they proved it didn't matter.
Like to calm people down like that. Wouldn't it be nice to be that rich? Be like, you know what? Like I'm just sick of hearing about this. Let's move the practice facility so people shut up.
I love it.
Seems to really be affecting the World Cup players.
Yeah, they're all going to go down with like substantial Achilles tears now. Although I do like that last year, now everyone was the most injury-prone guy in the world, according to anyone who plays fantasy football, Christian McCaffrey, only guy who doesn't get hurt.
Running backs as a whole these last couple of years haven't been getting hurt the same way. That's why everyone, I know we're doing a redraft show, but everyone in best ball land putting up dollars right now. They're drafting these running backs like we're in 2008 again. And I don't know, Pat, you said it. It was a nice little word of wisdom from you a couple months ago, just saying like, hey, when the whole industry seems to be going one way, you kind of like to zag the other. I do wonder if now that everyone has finally given up on zero RB, maybe it's time to go back to it.
Well, Jacob, we've been doing this show so long that we've seen the different cycles of draft strategies go through. And I kind of revealed that to Ian, like as you and I have talked about for years. Like, remember when who the hell was I taking? I was taking Travis Kelce at like pick number 4 overall. Be like, well, it's just he's the number 1 tight end by 70 points every single year. My advantage here is massive. Like if you can draft wide receiver 4 at pick number 4, but play him at other position where no one else is good, you get a huge boost. You don't see that anymore because you don't have that specific player. But I can remember me and you going double bang receiver rounds 1 and 2 when there was 11 picks of running backs in the first round. That's back when I was good at fantasy, when I was just doing the opposite of everyone else. And I still think that really holds true. And it's not because everyone's overthinking. It's that if everyone is just be like, oh, well, everyone's taking running back, I need to get one. If you start playing by that logic, that means you're just leaving really good players on the table.
Right. And it's funny. I was actually going to reference your best year in flex backs when you used to play was the year that you went 0 RB. I still remember that to this day. What did you lose in the championship or something like that? I don't know. I just remember it was your best season of doing it is the 0 RB. But I think there's a second part of it, and I think this is where we get caught in the offseason for everybody watching. I know there are a lot of people watching who do play best ball, but I think there's a stronger argument for zero RB if everybody's not going that direction in best ball than there is for seasonal leagues, where you have the ability to make those transactions. You have the ability to go after the waiver wire or make trades and address situations on your roster where zero RB gives you that edge in best ball, because there's nothing that can be done after the draft, as everybody knows. So I still think it's worth going after. If everybody in your league is hammering running backs, the values are going to be everywhere else. And yeah, you're going to be playing up from behind, but that's even the argument of the fact that like you can make those moves later in the season, be more aggressive. Is the problem is in seasonal, if you miss on the waiver wire, it's harder to overcome that than in best ball. So I think there's an argument in both areas for it, but I think it's a little bit stronger in best ball to go zero RB.
Well, I like the zero RB strategy. Right. But the thing is, right now it becomes a little bit tougher than it was, let's say 12 years ago, or even 10 years ago, Ian, when I was trying to deploy this, because people are just better at fantasy now. Like there's no, hey, if Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, I can go pick up spend all my fab and get Isaiah Pacheco. He's now just being drafted in the 10th round.
Yeah, and that was always my kind of beef with the zero RB bros, was like the idea that only zero RB drafters are able to go after the good running backs on the waiver wire. I mean, the guy with 4 awesome running backs already is also going to be putting in a bid for Isaiah Pacheco or someone like that who happens to be available, later in the season. So again, just one of those things where I see the reasons for it. I see the reasons why people are now drafting 3 quarterbacks more often. But at the same time, like we just get so into what happened last year and what happened the last 2 years when we're talking about just a ridiculous sport, 11 on 11 constant car crashes with the ball that's not round. Like weird stuff is going to happen every single year. And I do think the other side of it is as we get more of these, the other big phase, like all these, teams embracing multiple tight ends and everything like that. So I think the wide receiver 2 and 3 range is actually scoring less than we've seen in the past because we're not getting quite as much 11 personnel, because passing yards are down. So from that standpoint, you could actually argue that the top 10 or so elite wide receivers are more valuable than ever.
See, that's what I like to hear. So let's talk about the next one on the board, because I think that there is a distinctive split here. We take a look at it. Jonathan Taylor is running back number 4 being drafted. He's somewhere around 7 or 8 overall, Ian, in these drafts. When I Googled to see whether Daniel Jones is actually going to be healthy or not, guess whose article popped up first?
Your boy.
It was you. So tell me, is he going to be healthy or not?
Well, he's been healthy 2 seasons of his career. He's had these annoying, early season ankle issues. We had a hamstring, I think, one year. We had the contract that was a back injury, or maybe it wasn't, in 2023. But the 2 years that Jonathan Taylor, since his rookie year, has been fully healthy, he scored 20 touchdowns both times. And what was interesting last year, guys, because JT and the winning percentage stats, Jake's a split, those are very interesting. I'll let you say those, but the one thing we did from JT last year that was new was the receiving work, man. 5.7 of PPR points per game from purely receiving production. The previous years, man, he was under 4 like clockwork. So the Colts really, look at the other running backs, DJ Giddens, Seth McGowan. Like they don't trust anyone else to touch the field. And accordingly, nobody in the NFL left their running back on the field for at least 90% of the snaps, more than the Colts and Jonathan Taylor. 29% rate. CMC and Ashton Jeanty were the only other guys even over 20%. So he's a true every down running back. He's actually catching the ball more often, like 95 fantasy points from receiving last year. That's right there. It's ahead of Jalen Warren, Kyren Williams, Breece Hall. Like, I don't think most people would have realized that Jonathan Taylor was outscoring Breece Hall as even a receiver last season. So I think RB4 is right for JT. Is he in another tier? Okay, I'm cool with that. But despite the Colts very possibly being bad at football this year, because, I'm worried about the Daniel Jones injury going on. I don't think they're going to be able to keep it going and everything. He just doesn't leave the field. We know he's one of the best running backs on the planet. He's going to push for 350, 400 touches, and he's actually catching the football. So if we can keep that receiving work going, I think that'll help some of those less good historical splits where he was really only cashing in when they were winning.
I don't know why this feels like too much for me, Jake. Like, I just don't think that we've seen him be a game breaker and a weak winner with these giant games. And as Ian pointed out, he's doing more in the receiving game, despite the fact that he still has pretty negative air yards versus some of the very top end guys. Like, for example, last year, just taking a look back at how guys were actually used. When we think about like air yard opportunities, Jonathan Taylor's in the negatives. That's something like Javonte Williams or Ashton Jeanty. And the thing that all those guys have in common is that their opportunities per game inside the 5-yard line are through the roof. So they make up for the lack of receiving yardage they might get. They'll get their opportunities through the air, pile up receptions, but the yardage really won't be there as much unless they really break one. But you can see, like a year ago, McCaffrey was actually the leader of inside the 5, 1.6 opportunities per game. Then it was Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs, Ashton Jeanty, Derrick Henry. Most of those guys outside of McCaffrey aren't the biggest receivers. I just worry about that. If it's not Daniel Jones, how does he get utilized out of the backfield in that regard?
Yeah. So in everything you just said, what Ian was referring to was, and kudos to Ryan Heath, he's the one that actually put out the article talking about that we chase wins by teams because we chase the game script when it comes to running backs, because that's something that matters. And I went deeper from what his tweet was, and I actually looked at it. So Jonathan Taylor averaged 19 more fantasy points per game in wins than losses. He averaged 30 points per game in wins, 11 in losses. And if you look at it from week 12 through 17, he was number 3 in carries, number 3 in touches, number 18 in fantasy points per game. And that
came grandpa under center.
And that's the point. No. Ian, that's where I'm going with this. That's the entire point. If you are concerned, similar to Christian McCaffrey, we're associating him with the Jonathan Taylor with somebody else's injury situation. But if you're concerned about the Colts not being competitive, potentially being without Daniel Jones, I have Jonathan Taylor at 4 because there's all the upside that we've talked about if he's healthy. I mean, you're talking about the numbers when healthy, 30 points per game in wins. If everybody's healthy on this team, it's just enough ifs that the argument that I was making for it and what Ryan was making too is that if you don't like Jonathan Taylor for that risk, just wait a round and a half and take Derrick Henry, who is favored for 11.5 wins and has a very small difference in between wins and losses because of all of his touches. It's not that Derrick Henry will score what Jonathan Taylor can if everything goes right, because Jonathan Taylor, if everything goes right, 30 points per game, guess what? He's the best running back in fantasy. There's arguments for Taylor. It's just the if of Daniel Jones and the if of this situation. So if you want to take a wide receiver at this point, if you want to push Jonathan Taylor behind Cook or Achane or Jeanty, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but if you wanted to, fine, because there are that similar risks, it just happens to be the injuries associated with him, or not him, unlike Christian McCaffrey.
Ian, Jeanty is up next off the board. So it's 2 picks after Jonathan Taylor is going. Jeanty is running back number 5 right now. He goes as high as pick 9. That's in the NFFC, which is sharper than your regular type of ESPN, Yahoo's, that sort of places where he's going like 12 or even 10. So the sharper people are higher on Ashton Jeanty. They were also higher on Ashton Jeanty a year ago, and that didn't really work out.
Look, Jeanty, when you can do some, I guess, finagling with some of these numbers, right? When you give him the benefit of the doubt, he was awesome last year. When you look at just 1 yard before contact, so not getting smashed in the backfield, as soon as he gets the ball or anything, all of a sudden he was like a legit top 2 running back in yards after contact, tackles avoided per touch. You guys could watch the highlights, like, again, that Houston game down the stretch. Very, very bright future, but man, we are putting so much on the plate of just saying, hopefully Clint Kubiak can come in and fix everything. All right. They added Tyler Linderbaum at center. That's going to help. I would like to think that Kirk Cousins and Fernando Mendoza eventually will be an upgrade over Geno, but it's still one of those things like Pat. I'm not sure where we finish off with the Raiders when we were kind of ranking all the 32 scoring offenses, but definitely far closer to 32 than 1. So I look at Ashton Jeanty, and yeah, he's got a little more receiving upside than these other guys here. And I think that's the case for him being RB5. But man, we got Saquon Barkley in a probably improving Eagles offense in a healthier situation, still with no competition. I got Saquon RB5, James Cook RB6, Ashton Jeanty RB7, which is crazy that we can't get any sort of discount on Jeanty, because I would love to try to buy back somewhat on the guy, looking at, again, just what he did last year versus this year. You would think that there would be, this, like, Pat, I feel like guys that don't pay attention to fantasy football all summer are like, oh, I'll get Ashton Jeanty in round 3 this year and buy that bounce back. You can't do it because he's going RB5.
Well, Jake, I think that just describes all of us. We all see like, oh, the yards before contact were terrible. The Raiders led the league in different offensive line combinations. They go out, they get a center. I think they have a real offensive line coach and not just Pete Carroll's son this year. Who knows what's going on in Las Vegas these days? You expect it to be better. Like even by John's offensive line rankings, he has them projected as number 21. Not good, below league average, way better than they were last year. So as long as he's not getting blown up, and all of us know that, so all of us are like, yeah, let's jump on Jeanty. To Ian's point, he's just not going where we want him to go because everyone does want to go get him. I think at this price, kind of sucks.
I don't want it. I go James Cook 5, and I'll bring up the biggest thing is to get from Jeanty to James Cook last year, he has to have almost 4 more fantasy points per game. Heck, to get to RB5, he has to get 4 more fantasy points per game. This is just a major jump for somebody that didn't even finish top 15 in fantasy points per game. And I just I get all the arguments. I get the offensive line should help. Having capable quarterback play should help, but what we just saw from Kirk Cousins, are we really sure that he's going to be capable at any point? And then Mendoza, when he takes over, there's a lot of assumptions of whether or not his 1 year in college is going to translate to the NFL. I know there's some arguments out there. People are saying, oh, it's going to be like Joe Burrow, only had 1 really great year in college. But let's chill out. Joe Burrow was thought a lot better than Mendoza was coming out of college. So I just think it's a lot to put on Jeanty. If you want to put Jeanty inside the top 10, cool, thumbs up. We know the talent and we know the workload should be there, because if you're looking behind him, it's another player that we should argue for 300 plus touches. But like James Cook's argument, and I don't know if you're going to pivot into it because I don't know if he's next, Pat, but James Cook, everybody's like, oh, he can't do the touchdowns again. And you know what? You're right. He dropped off a whole whopping 4, but he also led the league in rushing yards. Why are we taking Jeanty over James Cook?
Listen, every year, right around the Masters, I tell myself, this is the year I'm going to become an outdoor person. Then reality hits. The patio furniture looks like it's been through a US Open setup, and it's nowhere as comfortable to sit as I want, and somehow I end up watching golf inside while perfectly good weather sits there through my window. So this year, I finally fixed that with Wayfair. I'm watching golf outside, checking the final rounds. It's awesome because the weather's heating up right now. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that I've used my backyard more in the past few months than I did the few previous years combined. I'm upgrading the seating, added some lighting, got some actual decor out there, and now it's become the place where I have coffee in the morning, dinner with family, and inevitably end up watching the late golf window while pretending I'm keeping an eye on the kids when I'm really just watching golf. Because I'm here working for you, all right? The one thing I tell anyone to buy immediately, an outdoor sectional from Wayfair. It's the Scotty Scheffler of patio purchases, but it's not going to let you down on the 72nd hole. It'll be there for you all the way, more like Scotty from the past 2 years. It's expensive enough that you think about it for a while, then once you have it, you realize it was obviously the right decision. And if you've never shopped Wayfair before, I tell you to stop making this harder than it needs to be. They got everything. You can check millions of reviews from actual customers, use Wayfair Verified to cut through the nonsense, and they even have assembly options available so you don't spend your entire Saturday afternoon trying to put together patio furniture while yelling at an Allen key. Patio season is here, and these deals won't last. Head to wayfair.com/m/outdoor right now to get your outdoor space ready for way less. That's WAYFAIR.com. When people are starting podcasts, it's actually starting a small business, especially when you're by yourself like I am. And I can assure you, I did not have some sort of grand business plan. There was mostly me thinking, hopefully someone besides my mom downloads this thing, and what happens if they do after that? I had to figure all that stuff out on my own. There's always those what ifs when you're starting a small business or just starting something. What if it's embarrassing? What if I make too much money and I don't know what to do with it and get stuck with taxes and end up like Wesley Snipes? Don't want that to happen. Fortunately, that never actually happened. But if it did, and it's you don't want to get put in that situation. Turning out, starting the small business and starting something was one of the best decisions I ever made. But I also know that if something like Shopify had existed the way it does now when I was getting started, it would have been a lot easier to get the ball rolling. Shopify powers millions of businesses around the world, from massive brands to people just getting started. They've got tools to help you build your online store. AI features. Oh yeah, AI features. Get them in there. Everyone wants them. Shopify's got them. They can help you create product descriptions and marketing materials and everything you need from payments to analytics all in one place. Plus, that Shop Pay checkout is legendary, folks. Legendary for converting customers and reducing abandoned carts. And if you're sitting there wondering, what if I get stuck? Shopify's award-winning 24/7 support got you back. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/PatMayo. Go to shopify.com/Pat Mayo. That is shopify.com/Pat Mayo. Well, I think it has a lot to do, and we can go to James Cook, and we can rank them both together here in a second. He is running back number 6 off the board, pick as high as 9, as low as 13. That makes him an average of 12. But to your point about JSN earlier, where you have him a little bit behind Ian of the very top 2 wide receivers, I think that's how people feel about James Cook a little bit. It's like, yeah, he led the league in rushing. He overachieved in touchdowns versus what his career rate was. What are the odds he does it again? Even if he just regresses, 15%, still very good, but nowhere near the heights that he hit last year. Looking at last year's expected fantasy points, the difference between Cook, Jeanty, and Barkley are pretty minuscule, honestly.
It's not too dissimilar from what Saquon did from 24 to 25, where it's like Cook was able to overcome his quarterback scoring all these rushing touchdowns. He was able to overcome not having this huge pass game role because he was ripping off these long ones. And, Cook's another one of those guys where if you do believe in the idea that running backs slowly lose a little bit of steam as they rack up these big touch seasons, Cook just had over 380, I believe, during the course of the regular season and the playoffs. So we've come a long way from people wondering if James Cook could actually, be given this 3-down workhorse role. Now he's got it, and it's just how long he can keep it going. Look, he's incredibly talented, though. This Bills offense has been the most, locked in, surefire bet to finish among the league's top 5 scoring groups for the last 5-6 years. They got Joe Brady and Josh Allen. I'm pretty confident they're going to be good again. My thing, and the reason why I have Saquon over James Cook, I think they're very similar. Saquon's a few years older. Who do I think is better at football, though? I think it's Saquon Barkley. This time last year, we were all pretty convinced for good reason that Saquon was Planet Earth's RB1. And I'm not so sure that one bad season with an absolutely brutal scheme in Philly coming off the Super Bowl high completely ruins that. So for me, very similar situation. I think Saquon's better than James Cook and better than almost every running back in the league. Give me Saquon RB5, Cook RB6, but again, very close.
Well, if we dig into Saquon, Jake, where do you have him in that argument? Because I don't know what to make of Saquon because he's so Jonathan Taylor-y to me. Even in the year, remember what was it? What was the year that? Maybe it was last year. Where was Jonathan Taylor going in drafts last year?
End of the first
3
round.
or 4.
What's that?
No, he was going later. He was going late. He was going like the end of the first round last year.
Well, maybe it was like 3 years ago. It was like coming off like a bad Jonathan Taylor year, and he slipped to like running back 7 or 8 or something like that, end of the second round, and then all of a sudden he was just the best running back. It feels like that's in there for Saquon as well, that people are like passing the buck, and you're just going to get caught with your pants down. Saquon's just awesome. I don't know if I necessarily see that because Hurts, what they were able to do 2 years ago is one thing. What we saw last year, I think is probably on the lower end of what we should expect from the Eagles offense, but I think it's closer to than what we saw 2 years ago.
And that's why I go Saquon behind him. I actually have Saquon behind Jeanty, Achane, and Cook, mostly because if you look at the 20-point is now the outlier. He had the 20-point season with the Giants, but basically every season since then, his 15-point season, that's his second highest after the 20-point was 15.7 or 8, which is what James Cook did 2 years ago when everybody was making the argument last year not to trust him because of the touchdown mark. And then all he did was go out there, get an extra 100 rushing attempts and actually be better on our rushing per attempt average and score, like I said, just 4 fewer touchdowns. I think the biggest takeaway here is that, I don't disagree too much because you just brought up the expected fantasy points. I think for me, that's why this is a tier. If we're going to be talking about this, I would even loop in Derrick Henry and Chase Brown into this tier for me. I have all of them in one giant group because I think you could have any of them finish right there neck and neck as the 5th running back, or any of them have just 1 or 2 minor things go wrong, but that's going to be the difference between 16 fantasy points per game for 14, which 14 is still great. Still means you're a top 10 running back, but it just means you're back end top 10 versus number 5.
Well, let's just throw some of these names. So we went Gibbs, Robinson, CMC, Jonathan Taylor. So let's do one-word answers here. Jeanty or Jonathan Taylor?
Taylor.
JT.
Okay. James Cook or Ashton Jeanty?
Cook.
All right, so Cook moves up. Cook or Jonathan Taylor?
Taylor.
Okay, so Cook goes after Taylor. Jeanty or Saquon?
Saquon.
Saquon or James Cook?
Cook. That's where we differ.
Okay.
Break it, Pat.
I like James Cook better, so I'll put Saquon there. We'll go to Devin Achane, who would be up next. Would you go Achane or Jeanty?
I would go Achane.
Jeanty.
I would go Jeanty here. I worry about this Miami offense, man. It looks bad.
It does, but I think that's the argument for what Achane on a bad offense did last year and still had 18.1 fantasy points per game. He's still 5th running back last year. And I think the argument for Achane on a bad offense is not that it can't get worse. It's just he's not top 5 anymore. Like, you wouldn't argue to put him in the top 5 because, and you know this, Pat, because we talked about it years ago when it happened, the late, great Mike Tagliere. Yeah, he did a whole article about how, like, unlike, I think it's a 10% chance or something ridiculous, whatever it was super low of a running back finishing not even just top 5, but top 10 on a bottom 5 offense. So if you do think the Dolphins are going to be a bottom 5 offense, cool, but that's why he's down at 8 and not 5 for me. So I would still say Achane. I'm not going to sit here, though, and argue until my breath is out that you guys are wrong on it if you wanted to take Achane behind all these guys.
I mean, there's more guys behind this, Ian, that I want to take ahead of Achane. Like a different scheme coming in, one that prioritized him and his ability to catch out of the backfield with a noodle arm quarterback who had his easiest throw to him. And now you bring in a running quarterback who doesn't love throwing to running backs with a mega cannon arm. I just don't see how this works out, and no offensive line to speak of.
100%. And RIP to one of the GOAT's tags. And I've run some similar studies that, again, show that running backs and quarterbacks specifically far more correlated with the best fantasy performers being on the really good offenses. So we've always known running backs are more dependent on their surroundings. Like Devon Achane is the man. All-time leader in the Super Bowl era in yards per carry. We know he can do great things as a receiver. There's a reason why he's been this top 5 fantasy running back, but we know the offense is going to suck. I would rank them 32nd, maybe 31st ahead of the Browns going into this next season. And then it's also what you brought up, Pat. We had noodle arm Tua, terrified of getting hit again, just dumping the ball down the second anything was going on. We also have Mike McDaniel scheming that up. Now we got Malik Willis, and I have also run these numbers. Dual threat quarterbacks, as much as that gravity in the read option game, it helps the yards per carry for running backs, but it doesn't outweigh the difference in targets because they're scrambling instead of checking it down. And also, as we see with guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, not that Wilson get the tush pushes, but they do eat into the rushing volume at the goal line as well. For the 5 or 6 snaps the Dolphins are going to have inside the 5-yard line this season as well. So I got Achane RB12. I'm going to let someone else draft him. And it's a scary thought. I will admit
one
that.
counter argument is the 2 weeks that Quinn Ewers started at the end of the season, only threw to him 3 times in both games. And he had 16 and almost 13 fantasy points in those 2 games. So it's not the end of the world that Malik Willis is not going to be as friendly as Tua was, because again, 3 targets in those 2 games.
That's a very small sample to go through.
It is
at the end of the year too.
I'm not saying it's not. It was against the Bengals and the Bucks too. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's not a death knell in my opinion that he's just not going to see 90 targets and might only see 60 in my opinion.
I mean, that's a huge drop for him. So I guess my argument against him, why there's even more running backs on this list that I like. So Achane's going as running back 7, high as 10, as low as 15 in some drafts overall. Like, he's just more or less the do not draft Achane is going to be when I get some hot takes. When I want some better SEO for this video, I'm going to throw that one out there.
It's funny you say that, though, is because I do have him higher than you guys at running back. But the overall, when you said the low end, is I have him more 13, 14 in my overall because I would take wide receivers before I took him.
Well, the issue just becomes, like you kind of said, it's like, what are the chances he comes inside the top 5 with the team that's projected to be has the second worst odds second best odds for the first overall pick? It's just not very high. So if I'm going to take someone inside the top 10, I would like to believe they have top 5 upside.
And that's so. Who's the other running backs? Are you going to argue for? I'm not trying to I'm just like, who are the other ones? I'm curious.
Chase Brown, I think, is the very obvious answer here.
I'm okay with that. That's the name I was going to throw out. If you want to argue for Chase Brown, same tier. We're still in the same tier for me.
Yeah, and there's 2 other ones too that I might gamble on. I'm not there yet, and one of them isn't even on the screen that I'm looking at right now. So I don't need to take him in this spot, but someone I just clearly like way more than anyone else. But with Chase Brown is going at pick number. He's running back 10, pick as high as 14, as low as 25 in some spots. You want to take him at that 25, Ian, that I'm sure of. But even going back to those expected fantasy points again, that when you're looking for players that get opportunities inside the 5, catch passes, and play 75% more of their team snaps in a prolific, high-scoring offense, yes, you're betting on the Bengals and Joe Burrow to be healthy. But to me, as long as Chase Brown stays healthy and Burrow stays healthy and Ja'Marr Chase stays healthy, you're looking at a guy that could be a top 5 running back. In real life, no, absolutely not. But in terms of fantasy points, yeah.
And that's exactly it, man. Like when I was going through those 4 categories for Gibbs versus Bijan earlier, like the one issue with Chase Brown is that if we were all sitting here ranking real life running backs, it would be a while until we actually get to him in that rank. But again, that's been the case for these last 2 years, and it hasn't stopped him from being this top 5 running back down the stretch and top 10 over the course of the whole season. So the argument against is that in 2024, it took a Zach Moss injury mid-season for Chase Brown to really be unleashed. And the splits with and without Samaje Perine were enough last season to kind of worry about it a little bit. But I tend to think it was more so the early season Jake Browning experience. They got Flacco going. They got Burrow going. The offense picked it up, and so did Chase Brown. So I'm not going to let 31, whatever he is at this point, old, Samaje Perine get me off of Chase Brown here. I also have him at RB10. And this is someone where I think we could look up and say there's top 5 upside. So I do understand Jake's, general point with Achane. I got him RB12. I don't think he's going to finish RB24 this season, but I do want someone in these first couple rounds that I do believe has top 5 upside, and that is Chase Brown. And that is why I will say, as much as I have Javonte Williams right next to Achane, RB13.
Okay, so that was the other name that I was going to go with here.
Oh, well, but here's the thing, Pat. I like it for Williams. I know he caught a lot of people by surprise last season, but he got the contract. Like, there's no more competition in Dallas. And the Cowboys are basically like the NFC version of the Bengals. Yeah. Like, we should not be surprised if those teams are first and second in scoring and everything. But Javonte, I don't have the same feeling that we could be looking at the top 5 running back. And in round 2, round 3, I want to be shooting for the moon there. So that's my only issue with Javonte. God forbid, though, we can get late round 3, round 4. Absolutely. I could be convinced though otherwise.
Well, but you're probably looking at best ball drafts right now. In redraft leagues, Jake, Javonte Williams is running back 17, pick number 35 overall. Like that's
and I have him in mid-teens. I think the question my question to you guys would be, as Javonte Williams seemingly supporters over where I am, and I like Javonte. I was on team Javonte last year. Like, look at what the team is telling you, and that's the argument for Chase Brown. What is the team telling us? That Samaje Perine and Taj Brooks and a bunch of like flyers on that roster. Clearly, there's no threat to Chase Brown, which is what we asked for last year. We got it. We got the same answer this year, and people are still like, I don't know with Chase Brown. Cowboys went into last year basically telling us that they expected Javonte Williams to be the guy, and nobody wanted to believe it, and then we saw. But my question back would be, how does it get better? Because you had 11 rushing touchdowns, 1,300 on the ground. I think you still have some potential in the pass department, but I don't know that Dak Prescott's going to throw to him much more than he did last year. So as RB, I think he was 12 or 13 in fantasy points per game. Like, how does it get better? That would be my question back.
Well, he has I would say the ways that it gets better, he doesn't really need to get better. He just needs to do it again. And all of a sudden you're very happy with where you've taken him in the draft. And the other one would be just he scores an insane amount of touchdowns. And he was on that list of guys that I had mentioned who would be in the running for that, only because he gets so many touches from inside the 5, inside the 10 in a prolific offense. Like, this is where you would want Chase Brown to be a little bit better, is that with over a 17 game stretch, he doesn't get hurt. The Bengals are good. And all of a sudden he goes from 0.9 touches inside the 5 and 1.4 inside the 10 to Javonte Williams levels of 1.5 and 2.1. And then all of a sudden he scores 5 more touchdowns. He's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that the Chase Brown could be the James Cook argument. Like, well, what if the touchdowns take a giant leap? I just don't know if I see it for Javonte, just because I don't know if this offense changes that much to what they did last year, where they're going to all of a sudden like, oh, let's just give it to Javonte every single time we get down there. I think my question back to you is like, I'm okay with him at 13, 14, even if you wanted to argue 12, but I thought, and maybe I was wrong, I thought you were making an argument to put him inside the top 10.
Oh, I am.
Okay. Well, that's where I can't get to that. I don't see how he gets there.
So
I do love if you do start wide receiver, and you can get Javonte in round 3. Like, for certain builds, he does make a lot of sense. Yeah.
I do agree with you that it's almost contradictory to my point about what I'm doing with Devin Achane, only because I don't see the top 5 potential. And I don't see that for Javonte Williams. So why am I taking a guy inside the top 10 that's not going to be top 5? I do think that there is cost associated with this, though, that one guy is going significantly later than the other. And frankly, I don't see that much of a difference in fantasy points. The difference in real life, Ian, is that one guy is a mule and one guy is super exciting. He might break an 80-yard touchdown. They just happen to score the same way.
Yeah, it's the pass game stuff for Javonte. Like, historically bad last year with some of the yards per target numbers that he had going on. So I don't know. People still think Jaden Blue is going to be a thing. I'm not really one among them, but if there was going to be an issue, it's just going to be the fact that Javonte, like, he's he's not a dead zone running back because the Cowboys offense is going to be awesome. And I don't think Javonte's like a horrible player or anything like that. But there is like, it's kind of like if Dave Montgomery was on the Cowboys, we shouldn't be going absolutely nuts about it. So,
well, let's do it. We've been doing the rankings here and going player by player. This is what I was talking about, a new format. We'll just list the guys, go head to head, and that's where they'll end up slotting. So one word answer here: Chase Brown or James Cook?
Cook.
James Cook.
You already outvoted anyway.
I did, but I'm trying to think of like this is a real, like, you guys didn't blink on this. I'm blinking on this. Like, so
same tier. I agree with that.
So Saquon or Chase Brown? I would say Chase Brown.
Saquon.
Come on, Saquon Barkley, bro. You're talking about Chase Brown.
Yeah,
Saquon Barkley.
I'm talking about fantasy points. You want to play?
My dog's
Madden?
going to be offended if you don't like. I mean, my mom got me the blanket for Christmas and everything with her face on it.
So Jeanty or Chase Brown?
I
got Jeanty one spot in front of him. You can, if you want to say Chase Brown, you can flip my opinion, Pat. I'll give you that. Say Chase Brown.
Chase Brown.
Chase
Why
Brown.
Chase Brown over Saquon, who I now have to put ahead of Chase Brown? Sucks. Okay. Javonte Williams or Chase Brown?
Chase Brown.
Chase Brown.
Jeanty or Javonte Williams?
Jeanty.
Achane or Javonte Williams?
Achane.
I would go with Javonte here, but now I've been outvoted, so he's going to go after Achane. My rankings are going to be fire this year, Jake.
They're clearly going to be
so ridiculous.
I still got 4 more names before we get to Javonte.
Well, maybe it's just because I don't like Achane and that his name happened to come up because that's where he's being drafted. That could be a part of this discussion as well, because anyone can sell me on running back number 9, pick number 16 off the board, Omarion Hampton, with a better offensive mind, trying to get him the ball. Second year in the league, the offensive line is back. Like, Jake, the arrow is pointing up. I understand why Jeanty's being drafted over him, but if you looked at overall upside and the situations that they're in, it feels like Hampton might have the higher ceiling.
I would agree. And the thing is, I didn't see a very big gap between the two, similar to Bijan and Gibbs when they came out of college. I think the gap was as pronounced as people were making it out to be with Jeanty and Hampton. So I think that Hampton deserves to be in the conversation. The only concern and why I think that Hampton's good in this spot, I would take him in this spot because you're still buying potential return. I think the people that are promoting to take Hampton as like the 6th, 7th running back off the board, now you're buying all the risk because there is still some risk. Yes, Roman's not there anymore, but this is still Harbaugh. This is still a backfield that Vidal is nowhere near Hampton's talent, but there's still the risk that they use him because this is the same head coach that you go back to years of like, why are they using Gus Edwards? Why are they using this guy? Why are these like, this is just a coaching scheme that seems to be, maybe it changes with McDaniel, but a coaching scheme, if you look at McDaniel using Mostert alongside Achane, is that it seems to point to everything being a second running back is going to be used 40% of the time. And whether it's a combination of 2 running backs that makes up the 40%. And I think that's the only hesitation I have on Hampton is that, yes, the offensive line healthy, Justin Herbert healthy, everything is looking great under Mike McDaniel's optimism, blah, 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 blah. But I just don't think we're associating the risk of what if it's more pronounced split and it's not 65, 70% of the workload for Hampton. And that's why I wouldn't put him inside the top 8 or 9. I have him at 11 personally.
Ian?
I do think that all the excuses I would say we make for Jeanty, they're kind of there for Hampton too. Yeah, the Raiders 31st in running back yards before contact. Chargers were 29th. Chargers offense scored a little bit more, but not exactly down the stretch. And we also didn't see them throwing the ball to Hampton nearly as much as they were to Jeanty. Things that, again, could feasibly all be improved with Mike McDaniel. I'm certainly way more optimistic in the Chargers becoming a juggernaut offense as opposed to the Raiders. And that's obviously faith in the Herbert-McDaniel partnership there. So I hear the competition concerns. I'm not worried about Mike Washington, eating into Jeanty's workload the same way that, Keaton Mitchell or even Kamani Vidal could in Los Angeles. But I do think with Hampton, guys, like, broke his freaking leg in week 5. All right. Before then, this dude was putting up RB1 numbers, and he was also, just in terms of the yards after contact, tackles avoided stuff, looking like one of the better running backs in the league there. So got a little fortunate with the Najee Harris Achilles and everything. So it wasn't exactly, that he didn't have a clean run out, but yeah, it's Hampton, man. Hampton versus Jeanty's a good conversation. I do think that the Jeanty workload probably gets him the nod for me, even though the Chargers offense is better.
I might agree with that. I think that they're very much in the same bucket, especially when you take a look at what they did last year, Jake. But at least we have discernible points that we can take away from the offensive line and say, hey, the Chargers offensive line is going to get better because their two best players are back.
That's a huge argument. That's the argument that everybody's making for Herbert, which, completely unrelated to this, but another did a show the other day is everybody waxed poetically about Hampton and what this offense can do if everybody's healthy, including Herbert, but nobody wants to talk about Ladd McConkey having to bounce back. My one concern about this, and when it comes down to Hampton and the touchdown department, is Ian just brought it up in a different way with not passing a ton to Hampton, is that also the Chargers near the top of the league in passing with goal to go, which is something the Dolphins were for years on end, including last year under Mike McDaniel. So the passing rate when it's goal to go is also my slight little hesitation of pushing. Like, I will take Hampton's argument for ceiling over Jeanty every single day. I just think there's enough arguments against potentially things going sideways for Hampton, where he's still an RB1. Again, my biggest argument just being I would not put him inside that top 5-6 conversation we were having earlier, just because I think there's enough going against him where it'd be hard for him to get there.
Well, let's throw him in the rankings here then. And I'm very curious, and you might not have these numbers at your fingertips, but if the Dolphins were so high up in goal to go passing last year, how many of those targets went to running backs?
I could see if I have those numbers. You continue to go and I'll see if I can look for you.
One word answer: Saquon or Omarion Hampton, Ian?
Saquon.
Chase Brown or Omarion Hampton?
Brown.
I have Hampton one spot ahead.
I'm going to go Brown. Jeanty or Hampton? I think this is the choice.
Go Jeanty.
I have Jeanty barely.
Okay, I'm going to say Jeanty as well. Hampton or Achane?
Achane.
Hampton.
I'm going to go with Hampton as well. So that's where he fits in. So right now, Gibbs, Bijan, CMC. So tier 1, Gibbs and Robinson. CMC, tier 2. Tier 3, JT, Cook, Saquon, Chase Brown, Jeanty, Hampton, Devin Achane, who wouldn't be there for me, but there he is, and Javonte Williams. Did you find those numbers, Jake?
Yeah, so the Chargers passed to their running backs 19.2% of the time. The Dolphins did it 22.6% of the time. Both of them are top 10.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's if he can be on the field for those, that's somewhat helpful.
Yeah, it is. It's just the concern of what we brought. Like, what if it's Vidal? Or, I mean, the Keaton Mitchell is the good point, too. By the way, we're still leaving out one name I would still throw in this entire conversation.
I got two.
Well, we're just going down the ADP list here. We just happened to jump on Javonte because he came up in discussion here. The next running back being drafted is running back number, let's see, we did Chase Brown at number 10. Kenneth Walker is running back number 11 being drafted. As high as 18, as low as 32. So this is going to be like a real pressure point in drafts of where people are taking Kenneth Walker. Obviously now on Kansas City. That's good news. I think Mahomes is going to be ready for week 1. It's starting to sound that way. So Kenneth Walker coming off Super Bowl MVP. Jake, do you like him or not like him?
I actually have Kenneth Walker at 11, one spot behind the other name that we haven't brought up yet, or 10. But I'm okay with the Kenneth Walker. This is the argument for both directions. Is like, let's just throw the Chiefs out for a second here and just say, what have we wanted the entire time we was with the Seahawks is to be a bell cow. Now, is he going to be 70? Is it going to be Jonathan Taylor bell cow? Absolutely not. They're still going to use, whether it's Dave Mercado, whether it's Johnson, whoever it's going to be. This is just what the Chiefs do. Going back, it could be. You're right. But likely the reports we're hearing so far from multiple people, like, again, this is something Pat and I have talked about for years, and I know you're going to agree, Ian. It's like listening to one beat reporter. That's where you make mistakes because they just have what might be the same thing we do. You have eyes looking a certain direction and it's almost confirmation bias. But when you have 3, 4, 5 beat writers saying that they're using Dave Mercado, they're using Johnson, they're still using blah, 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 Kenneth Walker still coming off the field, some third down plays. That's the concern that we have to bake in, and why Kenneth Walker is a back-end RB1. The argument here, and because we've seen Pacheco do it and others, why I think the upside argument is he is somebody who could finish top 5 if he is getting that work. If Kenneth Walker gets 300 touches, and why I said throughout the Chiefs, now let's bring them back into the conversation. They actually haven't been the Chiefs offense we think of in our mind for quite a few years now, especially with the running backs. But if everything gets back to what we know the Chiefs can do, and they give Kenneth Walker 300 touches, top 5 is definitively in play.
Ian, I just worry that they don't give him 300 touches. I think they saw what worked so well with Seattle last year. Maybe they, and listen, DeMercado's one way. Maybe he ends up becoming the receiving back, whatever it might be. But I think that the book is, I don't know this. Maybe the book's in on Kenneth Walker that he's like our main man, Jake. Lamar Miller, that you just don't want to give him the 300 touches because he either breaks down or becomes wildly inefficient. That's my takeaway from it. Why I wouldn't have him as high as someone like, let's say, Javonte Williams, Ian.
Well, Ian, before you say no, hold on. Like what he's referencing, because this goes back, is that Lamar Miller was putting up the exact same number with more touches.
I remember.
Okay,
I'm aware Lamar Miller is Jake. I got burned on that Houston turnover too, so I get it. So with Kenneth Walker, 43 million reasons to go ahead and, force feed him the football. And we have seen more of these free agent running back deals work out recently when they've gone to good organizations. All right. Josh Jacobs, the Packers, Saquon, the Eagles, Derrick Henry, and the Ravens. And even if Walker maybe didn't have quite as lustrous of a career as some of those guys before, I mean, Pat, we did see when they did take the training wheels off, they had to because, Zach Charbonnet's actual leg fell off. But once they did, I mean, unbelievable playoff stretch for Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker, as we've stated. Second since he's entered the league in tackles avoided per carry, 11th in explosive run rate. Chiefs running backs in that time, dead ass last in both categories. So Amari DeMercado was someone that should have been cut from the Cardinals halfway through last season. Emmett Johnson's a day 3 pick who would have been even later in a real, running back class. So I'm not scared of this competition at all. I actually got Kenneth Walker RB8. The pass down stuff, that is the one thing, because even after Charbonnet did go down last year, like George Halani was still running a lot of routes through Seahawks. They weren't really throwing him the ball. I do think Kenneth Walker is capable, though. I mean, I know that was the whole thing. Oh, he didn't catch enough passes at Michigan State and all this, but it hasn't been like a big, screaming negative for him at the NFL. I think the Chiefs need an explosive factor in their run game more than anything, and Walker can give them that. So, yeah, more of the, 14th, 15th ranked scoring offense over the last few years. But, Pat, I am curious where their offensive line comes in John's rankings, because they have, again, just ever since they've had some of these Super Bowl losses, they've continued to pour resources into it. And just in terms of dollars, only the Panthers and Broncos have a more expensive offensive line than the Chiefs this year.
Well, it's not the top 10. I searched the top 10. It's not there. Let me take a gander here at the 11 to 21 rankings. Let's see, Kansas City.
Josh Simmons, their first round tackle from Ohio State, was also out last year with some personal stuff going on. So he'll be back, which is nice.
So he's cleaned up his personal life. He's good now.
I never know with that, man. It could be, what I'm saying? I don't know.
So they have so John has the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line ranked 24th of 32.
Wow.
And who knows what we're getting from Mahomes?
Biased agenda.
Are we getting a gimpy? Getting a real gimped up guy here? Come back under.
Good. Then feed your running back 25 touches a game that you just.
But if everyone can now, part of the success that we've seen either Kareem Hunt have, or who are the other losers that the Chiefs have been running at running back?
Damian Williams,
yeah, almost Super Bowl MVP Damian Williams.
Yeah.
Jerick McKinnon ended up with great seasons here as well. That you have to account for Mahomes so much, whether it be running or passing, that there's just more availability and room to run. My biggest issue here is that this offense is down. Obviously, the offensive line, I hadn't considered them not being a high-end offensive line, but I do trust John on a lot of this stuff more so than I trust myself in evaluating offensive line play. But I just worry that if they try to go full hog here with Kenneth Walker through 4 weeks, part of the reason that he was so good in the playoffs, they didn't use him all year.
And that's a certain argument, but I was going to jump in on the offensive line thing, but that's something, we've seen before that people thought about the Giants. That was a pieced together offense, and they paid guys that they were just trying to fill in because they couldn't get anybody else. And then Ellie Manier and all the rest put together what was one of the better offensive lines last year, and the reason why they brought him back. So I trust John again. I'm not an offensive line evaluator by any stretch of the imagination. This is why I use other sources for it. I know, but the point being is saying 21st and they finish 11th. I wouldn't put that.
It's no different than defenses, honestly. We are just either watching it, understanding how trends stat wise work. And I know that both you guys are running models, but Ian, the stickiness of an offense year over year, even if you ran back the same 11 guys on defense, could go from the 3rd best defense to the 12th best defense like that. Just goes.
Yeah. Just some of the injuries that go into it too. This one actually doesn't help me. Rich Rebar find the updated one. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Reeves put together this the percentage of snaps that each team's actually had their top offensive line, like their top 5 offensive linemen together. Chiefs came in last year about middle of the pack, but only 35% of the plays. Jets somehow had the most well put together offensive line. That really did a lot of good for them. So I agree with the general sentiment, though. It's tough to really, quantify and just overall grade the offensive line performance. But A lot of dollars are being invested into this Chiefs run game. Should still be an above average offense. Look, it's why Kenneth Walker isn't going RB5. I will admit that. I have him RB8, but I got Hampton and Chase Brown right behind him. I do feel better about those offenses. So I do think at a minimum, he's in the same tier as everyone we've been talking about.
All right. Well, you just kind of revealed your hand here, Jake. Would you go Chase Brown or Kenneth Walker?
Chase Brown.
Jeanty or Walker?
Oh, Jeanty barely.
Hampton or Walker?
I go Walker barely. One spot. They're back to back.
So that's your answer as well. I like Hampton, for the record, more than I like Kenneth Walker. But as we're doing this as a group and putting this together, Ian, you agree? Walker over Hampton?
Yep.
And you got outvoted on the other two. So that goes Jeanty, Walker, Hampton, Achane, Javonte Williams for the purposes of these rankings. That brings us to Derrick Henry.
Thank you.
Tell me about Derrick Henry, Jake. He's 94 years young.
And that's the thing. If this is the year it finally falls off, fine, I'll be left holding the bag. But we did this before with Mike Evans. We've done this before with Derrick freaking Henry. And I bring up the fact that, like, you talk about the win total, that was the reference point all the way going back to Jonathan Taylor. And it's not just the win total, which we bank on the running backs. And he does average more fantasy points per game. But actually, of everybody with 200 plus touches, the closest, flattest running backs between wins and losses, two of them only have a 2 point and change, about 2.3 fantasy points per game difference. Barkley and Derrick Henry, because they produce no matter what, because they get all these touches. And Derrick Henry just put back-to-back great seasons in the receiving department for him. But it was still on a great, 10 yards per reception. So it's not like he's a nothing burger in the receiving department, and he's going to score double-digit touchdowns, unless the only argument against Derrick Henry is if he gets hurt. That's the only argument. And yet we sat here at the beginning of the show and said the only argument against Christian McCaffrey is if he gets hurt. So why are we killing Derrick Henry for the same exact reason that we just argued that Christian McCaffrey could be the number 3 running back?
I disagree with that, because I think that his overall upside, especially at this point of his career, is at a different point than it was 6 years ago when he was just playing 98% of the snaps for the Titans, because he doesn't quite have the same 4 touchdown a game in December upside that he did in some of those outlier years. Like, looking at his expected points, he overachieved last year, but he scored almost 17 fantasy points per game, and that was on 1.2 targets per game. Like, that is always going to be the drawback, that, yeah, he averages the most touches inside the 5-yard line per game of any player, most inside the 10. That needs to keep up just to keep him at where he's at right now, because he still, Ian, went over his baseline of expected points. In terms of expected points versus what he did in reality, he was 2.9 points better than his expected points would suggest. And expected points, he was behind Josh Jacobs, Cam Scatteraboo, Travis Etienne, Kyren Williams. That feels like more of his. Now, obviously, we have to add context to why he scored more points than those guys, and I will have him over those guys. But it feels like his baseline tier is more around those guys than some of the names that we've been talking about.
He did take a step back last year. Now, his step back was still better than a lot of other running backs, but yards per carry, success rate, explosive run rate. Like, he did go from pretty much first or second to at least behind, 8 or 9 other guys. My argument, Jake, would be, what if this Ravens offense isn't all that good? We have a brand new play caller in Declan Doyle who, got to hold Ben Johnson's water bottle for a year in Chicago, but this dude has never called plays at the NFL level. They weren't able to bring back Tyler Linderbaum, so we're hoping that, the Penn State guard first rounder can step in and help a completely retooled offensive line that, let's face it, they haven't invested in over the years. Like, I think Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley before this Penn State dude were like the only guys in the last 10 years they use even a top 50 pick on. So they've always ignored the offensive line because that's the Lamar Jackson gravity. And that's what he does so good, avoiding sacks and also being a part of the run game. Until he kind of wasn't last year. And I do think a large part of that was the early season hamstring injury, then the back issue. But, I'm not so sure Lamar Jackson that those injuries are going to be slowing up, and that maybe he's not going to be that same absolute demon that we saw back in 2019, 2020. Mark Andrews, is he still a thing? Zay Flowers is the only wide receiver, only pass game option that defenses have to care about. And there's still a large portion of people that just think Zay Flowers isn't any good. So my argument would be Derrick Henry finds himself in a below average offense, and he's just in a situation where, he's getting his carries, but it looks a lot more like the first 10 weeks of last season where they're honestly just not even going anywhere.
So, Jake, to look at it right now, he's going as running back number 12, as high as 18, as low as 22. That seems like a good spot to take him in my mind.
Yeah, and he's still in the same tier I was talking about before. Like, I have him in front of Walker and Hampton. I have him in front of them because even as everything went wrong with this team, what do we have? Maybe 4 healthy games, 100% healthy games from Lamar Jackson last year because he was always hurt or missing time. And yet, as bad as that was, okay, he didn't average the same from the year before in yards per carry, but it was 5.2 because he's Derrick Henry. He still scored 16 touchdowns on the ground in a terrible, let's be honest, a terrible offense last year. But that's why they bring in Doyle, who I will make this argument, and this is for Lamar Jackson, but this is why I wax poetically about the upside here is because Declan Doyle is implementing a lot more play action, according to reports. Lamar Jackson, pick a stat and he's top 3 in play action passing. This is something that, like, I don't know why. And we've argued for it for years before, why the Ravens haven't used this more when you have Lamar and Derrick Henry together and what that does to defenses. So again, I'm not saying there's no risk here, but my argument for him is that I'm now getting him at the back end of the top 10 every single year. The argument is like Derrick Henry's done, and he's not. I obviously at the end of the year, people are going to be haha, you shouldn't have done it. I'll be left holding the bag because I still believe he's a top 10 running back. I believe the changes in this offense. I believe a healthy Lamar Jackson, but there's a lot of injury risks with everybody involved, Lamar and Derrick Henry. So for him to be at 9-10 for me is okay because I'm not taking him as a top 5 running back. He was just 7th in running back points per game, despite everything going wrong last year.
See, some of this offseason play caller stuff, every single play caller that comes in is going to be the next big thing, man. Last year, we were being told that Chip Kelly was going to do these awesome things with the Raiders. The Ravens have run the 6th most play action in the league over the course of the last 3 years. Todd Monken had Lamar playing at his best level ever as a passer, but no, Declan Doyle is going to bring him to a whole new stage. I'm also hearing, Jake, that they're going to have a lot more wordy play calls, and that's going to be a lot more on Lamar Jackson without Tyrell Lindenbaum to get everything figured out on the line of scrimmage. I think there's a lower ceiling than usual for this Ravens offense. But man, you bring in Jesse Minter, still got some dogs on defense. They've shown that ceiling. I think the Ravens will still be a good real life team next year, but I don't know, man. This is
Let me clarify one thing. I never said another ceiling. I said better than the crap that they threw out last year. I think my point being is they can get back to being the Ravens offense we knew.
I don't know about that. That could be true in spurts, but I kind of agree with Ian that I think that this incarnation of the Ravens might look like a lot like last year's Houston team, but with higher upside on offense.
I mean, that's damning if true.
Well,
I've been Lamar Jackson defender for so many years.
Saying that could be a boon for Derrick Henry. I mean, listen, Woody Marks was like a guy that we were trying to start last year, and now you can put Derrick
Lamar's going to age
a higher upside version of that. That sounds not bad.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, I wasn't denying the risk. I'd still have Derrick Henry as a top 10 running back.
All right, Jeanty or Derrick Henry?
Jeanty, though. Yeah.
Kenneth Walker or Derrick Henry?
Henry.
Walker.
See, this is weird because the rankings are out of order. That I think I like him more than Kenneth Walker, but I don't like him as much as 2 of the other guys now behind him.
This is why it's fun putting rankings together with 3 people.
Walker. So Henry will go in after Jeanty, then Kenneth Walker. For the record, I like Hampton better, and I like Javonte Williams better. Ian, do you like Henry or Hampton?
I got Hampton.
Achane or Henry?
I got Henry over Achane.
Yeah, I do too. Javonte Williams or Henry?
Because I have Achane in front of Henry, but Chase Brown also over Henry. So yeah, we're all.
I got Henry over Javonte.
See, this is why we have to take it as a vote. 2-1 ends up winning, and we can get unique rankings. Then people can hit the description to find all of our individual rankings if you like that a little bit better, whether it be Jake's at theathletic.com, or you can find all of Ian's now at RotoWire, and you can get those links directly in the show notes. Mine, you can probably just find down there anyway. Not that you care about those. Don't worry about those ones. Don't use those ones. Bad rankings. Don't want very bad rankings, Ian. The worst.
Hey, we got like 40 more running backs to get through, Pat. Let's keep the show going.
We're not going to get to all of the running backs today. We're doing off-season content here, all right?
Best
Jeremiyah Love, Arizona Cardinals, rookie running back. People are a bit more pensive about this, I think only because of what happened to Jeanty last year, that there is a way that you can spin this, that, yeah, there's no quarterback in Arizona. The offensive line is really bad. It's a really tough division. But I do think that this offense, at least Jake, has the pieces to be better than anything we saw with Las Vegas last year.
It does, but it also has a questionable quarterback situation and the fact that does Brissett play like he does last year? Does the Brissett play the entire season with what's going on with his frustrations? And I'm not even saying week one, but I mean, what if that only means half the season? They know that he's not the long-term answer, so they start thinking future and evaluating the jokers that they have behind them, let's be honest. But
Gardner Minshew.
I know the Joker's behind them. That's a Beowulf. Let's talk about the pieces, though. That's the thing. Like they went and got Tyler Algier, and I'm not saying Tyler Algier is Jeremiyah Love, but Tyler Algier is somebody that was an RB1 before Bijan Robinson got to Atlanta, and then we saw at times for the past 2 seasons. Why are they using Tyler Algier? And again, I'm not saying I would use him over Love. Heck, James Conner or Trey Benson, one of them is going to be on the roster. Whoever can stay healthy, probably. It's just the fact that is Jeremiyah Love as a rookie going to walk into 60% of the touches? I would actually argue against that, despite the fact I think he deserves them because I believe in the talent. And then you go back to what does this team look like? If the offense is capable, like we saw at times last year for good chunks, then sure. But what if things go awry and they look like the Raiders and then we just get what we saw with Jeanty, an RB17? So I think there's a lot of factors where Jeremiyah Love, I think, is actually surprisingly priced perfectly. Like this is where you still have upside for him to perform and give you return on value. And if he misses, the hit won't be as bad here than it would be if we were taking him where Jeanty was going last year as like RB6.
Looking at where he is going, and it's really bizarre going site by site and taking a look at it, Ian, because at ESPN, which I would probably deem to be the most casual of these sites, although I guess if you're doing fantasy football drafts at the end of May or the middle of June, you're probably not the most casual person on the planet. But he's going as pick number 15 overall at ESPN, and then everywhere else he's going outside the top 25.
That's why at this point, as much as we do need to start moving on from best ball, I just prefer those ADPs because that's where people are actively drafting right now. So no, I think Jake kind of hit the nail on the head here. I mean, look, round 3, Jeremiyah Love. Okay, I can get behind that. But yeah, pick 15. Miss me with that. It's just a lot of the same stuff we said about Achane. Jeremiyah Love's exactly who we want in a prospect. Explosive, great pass catching ability, bright future. But the only 2 teams in the NFL with a win total of 4.5 Dolphins and the Cardinals. So, and we got extra competition to worry about in Arizona with the Tyler Algier point as well. But yeah, I think Breece Hall and Jeremiyah Love, I have them kind of like in their own mini tier here. Really talented players, just don't really love the offenses.
Instead of, I think that he would you put him above anyone that we've listed so far on the rankings list?
No.
I wouldn't. Jake, would you have him ahead or behind Javonte Williams?
Barely in front of. There's another name that I would actually prefer to Jeremiyah Love.
All right, I like Javonte better, Ian.
Yep, me too.
So that puts him down. You know, was that 1, 2, 3?
That goes back to my ceiling argument. If you want to take Javonte, I'm okay with it. But I think that if the Cardinals say, well, we did invest this, forget what we paid for Tyler Algier, and they give him 60% of the workload, and the offense looks like it did last year with Brissett, then you have top 10, if not better potential here.
Well, this is where he's going in the overall rankings, like other players that he's going beside. So just give me a one-word answer here. Jeremiyah Love or Nico Collins?
Collins.
Nico.
A.J. Brown or Jeremiyah Love?
Brown.
AJB.
Love or George Pickens?
Pickens.
Rashee Rice or Love?
Love.
Do it. Rice if we get 17 games.
Olave or Love?
Love barely.
I lean Love.
Josh Allen or Love?
This is interesting. I know you said one word, but this whole round 3 landscape, it's like that family, it's like that Family Guy meme where Peter, they can get the boat or they can get the mystery box. And he's like, mystery box could be anything. Could even be a boat. Josh Allen is the boat. We can just pick Josh Allen and quit messing around with everyone else, but we always find something else. So, hey, sometimes the mystery box is Jackson Smith and the Jigba. I get it, but I'm warming up to early round Josh Allen. He's going early round 4 sometimes, guys.
If you draft Josh Allen early in round 4, he's finally going to get hurt, right?
That's how fantasy works. That's
yeah,
what you do.
That's the rule of fantasy. I say all those names to say the next player of that tier is running back number 14, going as high as pick 26, as low as pick 31. He also got a big contract, Jake. He is Breece Hall in an upgraded situation in New York.
Yeah, I would actually go Love. That's not the name that I would have over Love at this point, but I see the argument for Breece Hall. The question I have here is I know he got the contract, but if you're thinking logically, and I know, hey, Sorry for everybody out there, for your 3 Jets fans that watch this, just specifically for Tim. I'm just saying, like, those are the guys out there, is that if you're thinking logically, why the hell do you run Breece Hall into the ground this year? You know you're at least 1 year away. They have a ton of draft capital. Kudos, because they're looking to they're actually doing things smart, and that's why I actually do think they are smart. I think they're smart and looking towards the future. They built all this draft capital over the last season, next season, and even past that. And you look at what they could potentially do. Why destroy Breece Hall this year, even with that contract, when you have Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, who could get 10 to 50% of the touches? And that's the only reason. I actually think this offense can be better than last year, with Geno being somewhat capable. I think Geno was a lot of the factors of what was going along with the Raiders. I don't think he's the 15th best quarterback, but I think he's better than what we saw with the Jets, or with the Raiders. So now with the Jets, if they are middle of the pack, cool. You want to put them in the teens. I just don't see the upside of Breece Hall, because I really do think the Jets are being smart, and they're not going to give him 65% of the touches.
Jake, you're betting on the Jets being smart. That sounds like a bad bet.
Look at what they've done in the draft, and the draft capital, what they're building. I have been
told that the Jets have won the draft each of the past 12 years. Okay, you know what? They haven't.
What was Tim's over? Have you done your over-under show yet? Did he give him like 11 and a half or something?
He casually has them, I believe, at 10-7, but optimistically, he's thinking like 16-1 is very good.
Love that guy.
If you looked at the Jets skeleton on offense and you remove the logo, you can start to tell yourself a story. They got the tackles, a couple first round playmat. Yeah, guys, I'll take my contacts out.
Some of these on.
Yeah, exactly. So look, Breece Hall, we had the 17 PPR points per game back in 2023. Yeah, I get it. It's Geno. I don't love a journeyman 36-year-old quarterback. Is Geno even going to be there, guys? Some of these, rumors, reports, investigations, whatever you want to say, not exactly the most, prolific situation. That's why, though, between Jeremiah and Breece Hall, it's like, all right, Jacoby and Geno, I think you can squint back to that and maybe say like this offense could be okay, but how soon is it going to be Carson Beck and Cade Klubnik under center ahead, looking towards the future and trying to, tank for Arch or whatever we're going to be calling that process as well. So I'm just a little, and the only reason I have Breece Hall one spot ahead of Love is I'm just more confident in Jake, I guess, that Breece, given the money, given the fact he's only 25 too, not an old guy by any stretch, I think he's just a better bet for 300 plus touches than Jeremiyah Love, talented, explosive pass catching running back in his own right. So very, very close. Not going to call you crazy if you want Love over Breece, but I think both those guys, again, round 3, God forbid, even round 4. I don't know what these ADPs are looking like, but these are sort of guys where I feel good about going wide receiver early and then looping around, because I feel like the days of being able to get these, 300 plus touch running backs still going this deep, they're fairly new.
Well, we can put him in, but we can talk about Kyren Williams first, because Kyren Williams is the next running back going per ADP at the moment. Let's see here. Yeah, Breece Hall was 14 and was going right around, like I said, that 26, 29, 31 type range. Kyren is going at pick 32, as high as 27, but he is being drafted as running back number 15. Is this, Ian, a running back you prefer over Breece Hall?
No, I got him just behind Blake Corum. Doing his thing, man. You see the jumping video? That thing is freaking athletic. It's wild, Pat. Like I would probably just break my back even trying to do that.
Is it higher or lower on the impressiveness scale? Is Jermichael Finley catching 2 balls with one hand? And then his ADP going up 8 rounds and him being the worst player of all time.
I'll give Jermichael Finley the nod, but still pretty impressive over here. So I just think we saw it already getting eaten into plenty last year. Now we're hearing it could be even more 50-50. Kyren's the more positive receiver, but they don't use their receivers very much in Los Angeles for good reason. You got Puka and Devontae to get the ball to, but I struggle to see the super high upside scenario for Kyren. Could he finish RB11, RB12 again? Okay. Again, I have him just behind these guys. Not like he's outside the top 20. Just tough to get too excited about it. The only other name I would say should be ahead, but right now it's just off the field stuff. Is a little bit of a cloud. Josh Jacobs is someone who I would probably put either right next to or right ahead of Javonte Williams if we knew he was fine and not going to be suspended.
Josh Jacobs, Jake, is going as running back number 18, as high as 24. That's nice. As low as 38, and as low as 41. And the 41's in high stakes.
Yeah. I think the concern is worried about the rushing yards because he had the touchdowns last year that helped. But I mean, Josh Jacobs was RB. And I always reference half point PPR. I think Ian defaults to PPR. But Josh Jacobs was 8. And the argument that I was going to have for Kyren Williams, more fantasy points per game than Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, Travis Achane, whatever he's calling himself.
Hold on. We didn't litigate this, Jake. You know how you pronounce his name? Exactly how I told you it was pronounced 5 years ago.
But he's not even pronouncing it like that. He's calling it Achane, which I made the you should have been on the other show, Pat, because when I referenced you when he changed his name and they said now his name is Achane, I said, no, as Pat Mayo has said for years, if you're going to call yourself in that fashion of that language, it should be Etienne. I actually gave you credit on that one.
Yeah, Travis Stevens.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, more fantasy points per game than Saquon Barkley, more fantasy points per game than basically every week because he was 9. But that was already a 60-40 split, which everybody talking about the Rams, including people at The Athletic, has said that's going to continue this year, which people see as scary. But he just had 40% lost to Blake Corum and was still RB9 in fantasy points per game. Are we arguing for him for RB9? No, I have him at 14, but I would take him over Jeremiyah Love and over Breece Hall and over Josh Jacobs, who I have next. I just think the argument to loop in Josh Jacobs, as you did, is I think the injury risk is starting to bake into people's minds too. And now, like getting banged up, the workload is getting to him. He was somebody that kind of seemed dinged up. It's kind of like Puka Nacua and Julio Jones. It's just like they always seem to not make it through the game without coming off the field at some point at this point of his career. And I think that's the concern, is that without the touchdowns, and I know it's the Packers and we argue for others like Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor that the touchdowns will be there because he is the guy and he will continue to be the guy. But just what if like it falls off just a little bit because it was so ugly. He didn't even have 1,000 rushing yards last year. And I know he only played 15 games, but still that was ugly to look at his yardage total last year.
So, Ian, they were within 0.6 expected fantasy points of each other per game. And it's a very similar type of thing where Josh Jacobs has 1.3 touches from inside the 5-yard line per game, 2.2 inside the 10, 1.1 and 1.9 for Kyren. That's both on the high end of those numbers of any running back. So if you think that they can get around the same amount of touches, I don't know what's going on with Josh Jacobs off the field. If I had to bet, I would bet nothing happens to him because this is the NFL.
Yeah. And if that's the case, that's why, again, I'm not so concerned about the injury stuff. And, Josh Jacobs last year, you're right. He was playing through one injury after another. So if that keeps on happening, he's probably not going to really improve it. But I don't know, man. Before he got injured for kind of like the final time in that Broncos game, he looked like one of the best players on the field. So yeah. I'm more of a Josh Jacobs believer than Mr. Jake, and that's okay. I just think that, again, there's no Blake Corum in Green Bay. I'm sick enough to still be drafting Marshawn Lloyd late, all right? But like that dude is not going to have like a 60-40 split all of a sudden fall into his lap or anything. So that's where I just think that Javonte and Jacobs make sense, right? We're not going to be getting this 60 catch, super boom, ripping off 60-yard touchdown season or anything like that. But the Packers offense, I believe in the Love-LaFleur partnership. I think they could easily be a top 10 scoring group. And accordingly, Josh Jacobs should again be someone who can score 15 plus touchdowns. And I do think that's one thing that all of us, and we've probably all done it during the course of this show, but like we always talk about like upside, and it's always the guys who again more fast and catch passes. You know what good upside is too is Javonte Williams or Josh Jacobs falling into the end zone 16 times on a really good scoring offense.
Well, I guess that's sort of the thing. Would you take more volume for Josh Jacobs, Jake, over Kyren Williams, who's just simply going to play in better scoring conditions? And not that the Packers are bad, the Rams are just excellent.
If you told me Josh Jacobs does play 17 and gets the volume, the volume will be there. So if you told me the 17 and the risk of whatever's going on in the outfield, like you said, it shouldn't happen. Like if we knew both those things, same thing with the Rashee Rice situation, but we knew 17 games and he's not going to have any problems off the field, I would move Josh Jacobs up. I think that's just, they're in the same tier. So as of today, if I'm drafting in July, I'm not going to take that risk.
Josh Jacobs or Devon Achane?
Achane.
Javonte Williams or Josh Jacobs?
I'm okay losing that one. I would go Jacobs.
Did you say Javonte, Ian?
Yeah. Okay. So are we saying that there's zero risk in anything now?
No, we're just saying these are the rankings that we're making for this show.
As of today. You're drafting us today.
On July 2nd. No, give me Javonte.
Okay. Breece Hall or Josh Jacobs?
Hall.
Breece.
You guys are both taking Hall. I was going to take Josh Jacobs. Okay. Never mind. So would you take Hall or Javonte?
Hall.
Javonte for me. It's okay. Javonte, Hall, Jacobs, Jeremiyah Love or Josh Jacobs?
Love.
Jacobs for me. I didn't hear.
So-
I only heard one of you guys.
Oh,
say.
I said Love. We both said Love.
We both said Love.
Okay, so Jacobs, and so it becomes the debate we just had. I will go Jacobs over Kyren Williams.
I would go Kyren.
I'm going Kyren right now. Talk to me in a month,
Yeah.
and it should be Jacobs, hopefully. But
So
Catch
we
me
basically have
outside.
Jacobs at ADP.
What about his ADP?
That's where we have him ranked right now. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, RB 17, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think it's because everybody's on the same page. It's tough to make that call as of today.
I like everything we just talked about. I thought we all landed on Jacobs better than Kyren.
No, I was still Kyren the whole time.
Nothing's happening.
if there wasn't a potential, I know.
There's no
man,
potential.
but-
They're not. Listen, what's a max? He's going to get 2 games at the beginning of the year. We know how this plays out.
2 games or 2
And
games.
that's why. Look, if you are drafting right now, yeah, I'd probably be betting on that and buying the dip with it. But just as we're ranking right now, I get why he's going RB17.
All right. I think that's a good place to stop. The only thing I want to do is break this part into a tier here. So we had Gibbs and Bijan, tier number 1. And then we had Christian McCaffrey as tier number 2. And then we had the whole group of the other running backs. Where do you guys think that we should put this? Do you think that I think that Achane is out of this tier? And I think that I would probably have I would go Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Saquon, and Chase Brown. And I like Chase Brown better than both Barkley and James Cook, I think.
Who else was after Chase Brown?
Jeanty, Henry, Walker, Hampton, Achane.
So I stop at Achane.
I feel like it's one big tier. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So and you would have Javonte Williams out of that tier, Jake?
Yes, I would have him in the next group. With
So the next
Love
group would
and
be
Kyren's.
Javonte, Breece Hall, Love, Kyren Williams, Josh Jacobs. And we can add more to that tier next time. Sound good?
Maybe.
Hell yeah.
Maybe. Oh, you don't love
And-
Cam Scattaboo, who I think is next.
Oh no, I would not put Scattaboo. It's a teaser.
ETN and Tootin over.
Oh, yeah,
Saturday. How about
ETN.
that?
Okay, question. If you guys
He's
know
gotta
this,
get outta here.
is Kamara playing?
As of
Yeah.
today,
Okay. See, it seems high for ETN to be going where he is then. That's my thought on the match.
Etienne.
Why gone
say it
down?
right.
Etienne, because he is from Louisiana. I guess they have a different type of French in Louisiana. They have more Acadian French like I do up here where I live, because that's where everyone's expelled to. This is why I know all these things. Anyway, Ian over at RotoWire, look very forward to checking out all your work over there. Jake, you've been at The Athletic for 487 years now, so I'm very familiar with what you do there, and I can't wait to check it out for another season. You can find me over at 4for4, the free Mayo Media newsletter, and obviously on Mayo Media Network. Smash like, give me your favorite value, and I will see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!